What's up YouTube, I'm Guy, and today on the channel we are going to be taking a look at a Marathon General Purpose Quartz. This is of course a field watch and my very first marathon watch. Big thank you to the viewer that sent this watch in on loan. Actually, he sent in a couple of watches for me to review on loan, so a very big thank you indeed. Now, if you've been following my channel for the last 2 years that I've been on YouTube, I've made it abundantly clear that I really like field watches. There's just something about that simple, straightforward, black dial, 3-hand movement, generally not a complicated watch at all, maybe a date, but even then sometimes not, which is the case in this watch. Yeah, I absolutely love field watches. Something about that style, that design, that aesthetic, it really does speak to me. So when I had the opportunity to take a look at this watch, I was extremely excited to have a look at it. There's some things about it that are extremely cool. Now, number one, it uses tritium gas tubes for its illumination, which is really interesting, and I think it's the first time I've had a tritium gas tube illuminated watch face or dial, so yeah, first for me there as well. There are some shortcomings though. Number one, very small watch. I'm gonna just get that out of the way right now. A little too small for my tastes. Number two, the movement, while it is a quartz movement, and I have absolutely no problem with quartz watches. As a matter of fact, I kind of like them. I like very accurate watches. I like watches that I can just pick up and throw on, and the time is gonna be set and ready to go. But it has a little bit of a quirky function that I'll demonstrate when we get over to the tabletop. Definitely some pros and cons to this watch. I'll lay them all out in the tabletop view. Then we'll come back over here for my final thoughts, so don't forget to stick around for that. Alright guys, here we have it, the Marathon General Purpose Quartz. The reference number on this watch is WW194004SG. SG because it is the sage green coloration. I'll be completely honest with you, I can barely tell that this is not a black watch. The case coloration, it looks, well, I guess in this light, maybe it looks green. In my normal lighting conditions in the house, yeah, it almost looks black. But nevertheless, this is a Mil-Spec watch. It follows Mil-Spec MIL-PRF-46374G as laid out by the Department of Defense. It has a national stock number of 664501318983. Those numbers are used to reference the, like the catalog number within the United States military arsenal, I guess, if you'd want to call it that. Probably the wrong verbiage or terminology there, forgive me. I was never in the military, so that's basically all I can give you. This watch, interestingly, I'll take a look at this first, the box that it comes in. It just comes in this very simple, plain cardboard box. On the box label, you can see those numbers that I referenced amongst some other information. Very small, very unassuming little cardboard box. I thought that was kind of interesting. And I thought, I'll just give you a quick look at that. It's like pull it off the shelf, hand it to a soldier, and he gets up and goes, There's not a whole heck of a lot to it. Basic features and specifications about this watch. We have a 34mm case diameter. We have a lug width of 16mm with a thickness of 11mm. The lug width from one extremity of the case to the other, or what I historically like to call the watch's wingspan, comes in at 40mm. Overall, it is a pretty small watch. Now, it's funny, it's a very fine line between what is like too small and too big for me. I typically like watches around 36 to 40mm, so 34 is not absolutely tiny, and I'll throw it on my wrist eventually and give you a look at it. But yeah, it does wear a little bit on the small side. The watch case is made of this high impact resistant fiber shell. It is an interesting material in that it is very high durability, very low weight. It is passively matte finished so as to, not give away your position, I suppose, if you were, somebody in the military. Trying to be a little bit stealthy, I guess. It's an interesting case, and when you touch it and feel it, it is completely smooth, 100%. It's a really nice feel, and it does feel very, very light, though, without a doubt. I don't want to say that because it feels so light, it feels low quality. That's not the way that I would describe it. It's just certainly much different than what you would find on a typical stainless steel cased watch. This does use a Hesselite crystal, the plus side being that it is very shatter resistant. If you were doing, outdoorsy kind of things, and you bang this crystal, it shouldn't shatter into a million pieces. It might crack, it will certainly scuff and scratch, but shatter it should not. So this is going to be a downside for some people. 30 meters of water resistance. I don't think that that's necessarily a big deal. Again, this meets the military specifications as laid out by the Department of Defense. So if it's good enough for them, it probably is good enough for me. Could you swim with this watch? Yeah, I would imagine you probably could get away with it. Certainly I wouldn't want to, submerge it for long periods of time, go deep diving or anything. But it hopefully would stand up to the rigors of the typical type of use and abuse that a person taking this watch into that sort of environment would experience. Now, probably one of the coolest aspects about this watch is the H3 Tritium gas tubes, which we find on all of the hour markers, those graduations outboard of the Arabic numerals on the dial, and also the hour and the minute hands. I'll give you a demonstration of the Tritium glow-in-the-dark lume here in a minute. To suffice to say, though, it's not incredibly bright. Your eyes have to be adjusted to the dark in order to really get a good read, to really see the watch, basically. It's faint, but that's the way that Tritium works. The upside is it will just continue to work. After Superluminova gets a charge, 10-15 minutes later it's very dim, and 6, 7, 8 hours later it might not work at all. This will glow constantly, at least throughout the entirety of the Tritium's half-life, which I believe is around 25 years. Now this watch uses an ETA F06 quartz 3-jewel movement, plus or minus 15 seconds per month. Decent enough movement, nothing too incredibly special about it, but it has one strange little, peculiarity, I guess. That's what I would call it, and we'll talk about that here next. So this is, of course, a hacking movement, like you would expect. If you pull the watch out all the way, it will stop running and, hack. You can set the time, set it forward, set it backwards, whatever. The thing that's peculiar about it is there is a notch for a date set position. If I pull it out just a little bit, there's a click right there, but it's still running. And as I rotate the crown, I can feel a date wheel flipping over. Now, there might not actually be a wheel in there, but the mechanics for it do still obviously exist in this movement. If you pull the crown out all the way and advance time forward, the date doesn't flip at 12. Interestingly, the date will flip right around 5:30. I'm going to feel it click over. Actually, no, that was not quite there because it's 12 hours later, apparently. Nevertheless, though, as you approach that 5:30 mark, right around here, I felt the date click. 5:38, 39, somewhere in that ballpark. It's not a big deal. It's not like it ruins the functionality of the watch. It just, it doesn't appeal to me that is in there, that there's this hidden mechanical functionality. I don't really like that. I would expect a little bit more refinement. I mean, yeah, it's only a $200 to $250 watch. We're not talking about high end here, but it is just a simple quartz movement, and I would, just expect it to be a little bit more refined. To pick a movement that doesn't have an invisible date mechanism built into it. Now, this is the previous generation. They updated this model in 2018 to have a couple of different features. Number one, a sapphire crystal. The crystal on this watch is a hesselite or acrylic crystal. And it's really nice. I like it, actually. You get a little bit of distortion there as you kind of rotate and look at an angle. Not going to shatter. I think that's sort of a plus in a lot of ways. In the new version, though, it is installed with a sapphire crystal, and outboard of the sapphire is not a large, but a noticeable stainless steel bezel. This, of course, has no bezel on the outer edge of the crystal at all. The crystal is just pressed into the case. So this, again, keep in mind, is a 2017 and prior version. Another difference is the crown on the newest iteration, I believe, is stainless steel, and I think that this crown is made out of the same fiber shell material as the case. I don't think that's a big deal either, but Maybe it's slightly more durable if it were to be upgraded with the stainless steel crown. Your mileage may vary. This watch does feature a stainless steel case back, however, and there's all of the mil-spec markings, that national stock number, all of the basic specs about this watch. But yeah, that is in stainless steel, so I guess that's an upside. The dial, and that is what I love about field watches in general, is the dial is awesome, but they're all basically the same, more or less. That said, you have a 12-hour scale of Arabic numerals, and then within you have a 24-hour scale, 13 to 24 there. Out on the edge of the dial, of course, we have a seconds or minutes track, and the second hand does index pretty closely with all of the graduations on that second scale. It's maybe off a hair, kind of depends on the angle at which I'm holding the watch, but yeah, it's very close, closer than a lot of watches that I have had experience with. So other than that, we have Marathon branding, we have the H3 and the little radiation logo at the 3 and 9 position, and then down at the bottom, US government. I think, way down at the bottom, we have Swiss made as well. And that's basically it, just a standard matte black dial. All of those graduations, the main hour graduations, again, are H3 tritium gas-filled tubes for illumination. And then on the handset, you can probably see a white sort of syringe style handset with tritium tubes also. The 12 o'clock tritium tube is the only one that is slightly different in that it's orange, and that's going to help you in the dark find your orientation. That's a good thing. I think it looks cool. Again, not super bright in the dark, but when your eyes are fully adjusted to the dark, I think it works just fine. There's no real issues with using it. It's just not blindingly bright like Superluminova or Seiko LumiBrite is when you first charge it up for that first 10 or so minutes. This doesn't work that way. This fiber shell case is actually kind of nicely done. Aesthetically, it's a little bit, boring might be one way that you would describe it. It's very blocky, very chunky, but I like the material. It's super lightweight. It's apparently very durable, very high impact resistant. You can see that there's lug bars on the sides of the case, but these are not removable spring bars. They are fixed lug bars. So your ability to change straps is going to be limited entirely to NATO style straps in the 16 millimeter width. That is definitely a little bit of a downside for me. I think that 16 millimeters is a little bit too small for me stylistically. I get why they probably did it as far as, for the military. It will be universally functional for most body types, and it will be lighter weight, and size and weight is a big issue for that job. I get why this watch is so small, 34 millimeters, 40 lug to lug, that 16 millimeter lug width. I get it, but stylistically, yeah, I don't love it. I would like it a little bit bigger. I think they do have a slightly bigger, maybe a 39 millimeter option or version on their website. However, you get a bit of a different case shape, and if you like this sort of, small, chunky, squared off case, you're not going to get that in the slightly bigger size. It does look a little bit different. This watch does come with a decent NATO strap. The quality of the nylon, it's not bad. It's kind of, typical for ballistic style nylon. The buckle is a very simple, thin, plain black buckle. It's not highly polished or anything, so again, this is meant to be somewhat stealthy, somewhat low profile, and that buckle certainly would achieve that. The keeper is sort of an RAF style NATO loop, and not the metal hardware that you would expect on a lot of types of NATO straps. This NATO strap is also mil-spec. It follows the Mil-Spec 46383B. So I guess that's kind of cool. Again, if you're into that military stuff, if you're a collector of militaria, memorabilia, things like that, maybe this would be something that you would want to check out a little bit more closely. But yeah, overall, it's a fairly basic NATO strap. Nothing super high quality or outstanding about it, but certainly functional. It seems to be durable. I think it would work fine. On my 6 3/4 inch wrist, yeah, it wears a little bit on the small side. Not too small. I mean, I could definitely wear it. My biggest complaint being that 16mm lug width. I'd like it a little wider. Certainly 18, but my preferred lug width tends to be 20. That's just me. That's my personal tastes. If you had a very big wrist, though, and the owner of this watch's wrist size, if I'm not mistaken, was something in the ballpark of 7 1/4, I think he told me, the NATO strap is not extremely long, so you may need to get a longer NATO strap if you have a larger wrist. Definitely a cool little watch. There's some things about it I do like. There's some things about it I don't like, and we'll cover those. We'll cover the pros and cons in my closing thoughts. So I'm going to jump back over to the studio view. Stick with me for a few more minutes, and yeah, I'll tell you what I think in the end. So what are my final thoughts on the Marathon General Purpose Quartz? Well, overall, I probably would give it a pass. Let's just get that right out of the way. I do like some things about it. Generally speaking, though, I'm not sure that this would be the right watch for me. Number one, I think the price maybe is a hair too high. It's got an MSRP of around $250 if I remember correctly. You can find them for about $200. That's not outlandishly expensive, but considering everything that you're getting here, yeah, I think it should be a little less expensive. It's a Mil-Spec watch, which is cool, and perhaps that is reflective in the price, not because it's expensive to make Mil-Spec products, but because they just demand a little bit more collector interest. Manufacturers know that if this product is used by and the specifications are laid out by the military, people will want it, people will pay more, and I think that's partially why we're seeing the price that we do see on this watch. The H3 Tritium gas tube illumination, that is really cool. I like that a lot. It will work basically all the time, anytime. It doesn't need a charge. Of course, there's a half-life to how long Tritium will work. I want to say it's somewhere on the order of about 25 years, if I'm not mistaken. If I got that wrong, correct me down in the comments below, but somewhere in that ballpark. For sure, well over a decade. Definitely approaching 2 decades. You should have no problems with the illumination on your watch. That is a really cool feature. It's a pretty handsome watch too. Classic field watch design or style, one of my favorites, like I already said. I do like the way it looks, but it is a bit on the small side at 34mm with a 40mm lug-to-lug. And probably my biggest problem with the size and scale being that 16mm lug width. Alright guys, well that's going to wrap this video up. I hope you enjoyed this look at the Marathon General Purpose. There's some things I like about it, there's some things I don't like about it. Overall, probably would be a pass for me for the reasons that I've already laid out. But if you're interested in it, I do think that it's a pretty good quality watch and you will most likely enjoy it. Thanks again for tuning in. As always, if you'd like to help support the channel, down in the description of every video I do is a number of ways that you can help me out. Number one, follow me on my social media accounts, be it Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. I would appreciate that very much. Number two, Patreon. I could always use a little more help over there. Big thanks to the guys that are already contributing on Patreon. The link is, again, down below. Also, if you want to help support me by using my Amazon affiliate link, that can be found down in the description. If you like anything that I've reviewed and you're considering buying it, or if you want to buy anything for that matter, you click on that link first and I get a small commission. Those commissions do add up. They do help me out a lot. I appreciate everyone that's been using those. Of course, subscribe, like this video, comment, share, blah, blah, blah. You all know that already. So yeah, that's going to do it. Thanks again, and I will see you on the next one. Bye now.